Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz test postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz test game number 217. I was white here, kicked off with e4, and we got into the French defense, one of the main lines of the French defense, the Winawer variation. So d5, knight c3 is a way of attacking the center, and bishop b4 a way to counterattack, or counteract the attack on the center, putting pressure on the knight and threatening to take on e4. So the normal move is pushing to e5, then c5, counterattacking the center. White plays a3, bishop takes, pawn takes, and then knight e7 is the main move of the Winawer, although you can also play some of these other moves, queen c7, queen a5. All these are interesting. Yeah, the engine finds the same moves too, knight e7, queen a5, and queen c7 as possibilities. Okay, so my opponent played knight e7, the main line, and I follow up with queen g4, so far so good. And then at this point, finally, we diverge from the main line, which I'm most familiar with the poison pawn variation, which goes queen c7, so I just want to show you guys. It's kind of an interesting line. Queen c7, you can take this pawn here, and then rook here, protected by the knight, chases the queen, and so white has grabbed two pawns right off the bat, but black starts grabbing some pawns over here. And now white needs to play carefully because there's a big threat on c3. So knight e2 is almost mandatory, although it is possible to play king d1, kind of a funny idea. But the idea is just to get the king away from this queen takes c3 check, winning the rook, and also defending c2 at the same time. But I normally play knight e2 there. Anyway, that's a different line. Let's go back to what was played. Right here, after queen to g4, my opponent played knight f5 instead. So move I'm not really familiar with, so I was sort of on my own. But it's interesting, I found the book move here, bishop d3. It's sort of logical. You want to put the bishop on this square when you can, even provoking this move c5, just because you want to close the center and attack on the king side. That's kind of your long-term plan. And in this particular case, so that's why this bishop e3 is a good move in general, d3. But in this particular case, it also has the benefit of you can take the knight here and then grab on g7. So it's also threatening to win a pawn. So it looks like h5 is the main move, but queen a5 is not a bad move either. So it's just not in the book. Yeah, let's go with the notation tab. But it seems like black is doing okay here. So an interesting way to play. And so I'm sort of improvising here. I don't really know what's going on. I was thinking for a long time of knight e2, but I eventually settled on bishop d2 to protect the c3 pawn once again under attack from the queen. And my opponent played g6 here, defending his g pawn. I guess actually I'm not entirely sure why the purpose of this move, because well, maybe the knight's going to move away, or he's afraid of me taking the knight and grabbing the pawn. So that eliminates that possibility. Because there's no longer a pawn hanging. So I make a mistake here. This is my first of many mistakes in this game. I'd just been talking earlier in the video about how there's pressure on the d4 pawn. It's pretty symptomatic of this opening that black is trying to put pressure on the center and win a pawn here if he can get away with it. And a lot of times the move f4 is helpful in shoring up the center. But in this case, it's a mistake because you need the queen to support d4. So when I play f4, d4 is just hanging and he can take it. Instead, he played queen b6, which is still keeping the pressure on the center, so it's not a bad move actually. And pretty much I have by this move f4, I've pretty much given away my advantage, and we have more or less an equal game. I play knight c3 here, trying to shore up the center a little bit, but it's kind of too late, and he can go ahead and grab that pawn. And here, I guess I could have tried knight g5 instead of knight takes d4. I didn't really think of that. That maybe is a more interesting way to play. When I take, it brings this queen forward, whereas if I just ignore the knight, leave it there, and then play knight g5, maybe I can counterattack on the queen side. And also c3 is an idea here, just kicking the knight. Okay, so but I take, and his queen comes forward, and now he's hitting my rook, and he's preventing me from castling. So, and he's a pawn up. So black has done well in this opening. Although if you look at the evaluation, white has some compensation for the pawn. White has the bishop pair. He's got open lines, and he's got a lot of active pieces, although they're not well coordinated at this point. They're at least out and doing something, whereas a lot of black's pieces are still at home. And it's interesting to see how much later in this game this becomes a problem. But for now, we continue developing. I'm trying to get my bishop to e3 so I can castle, get my other rook in the game. And he plays queen a4. And right here, I make another mistake. What's interesting is that, so I was concerned about the a3 pawn. This queen move attacked the a3. And what's interesting is that white can just castle here, because there's sort of an indirect defense of the a3 pawn based on a discovered attack. So I'll show you. If the queen takes the pawn, white can play bishop to b4, and you think, oh, this is crazy, the bishop is just hanging. But in fact, you win the queen this way, because this move bishop to b5 check wins the queen, because it unveils this discovered attack. So after bishop b4 here, black cannot take the bishop. It's defended by the rook. He can't take it with the queen, and if he takes it with the knight, he loses the queen to the discovered check. So the queen just drops back. And this is a position where white is now 2 pawns down, but he's got enough activity to compensate. So it's kind of interesting. So I was worried about this pawn, and I tried to defend it with the move bishop to e2. Oh, completely overlooking the fact that the queen was also attacking c2, and I just undefended it. So my opponent grabs this pawn, and now I'm 2 pawns down. But if you look at the evaluation, you see I still have some kind of compensation based on this activity. So rook to c1 is a logical move. I want to be able to castle, but I need to drive the queen away in order to castle, because the queen was attacking this bishop, which would be loose if I castled. It would be hanging. So the queen goes away, I get to castle, and then he plays knight d4, coming in with a fork against my queen and bishop. If we back up, it looks like castling. I was a little too eager to castle. Bishop d1, yeah, is a much better move here. Just chase the queen away a little bit further, and then it's safe to castle. Perhaps safe to castle. Yeah, actually, the engine line doesn't show castling any time in the near future. So, but it is a good idea in general. maybe not in this case. You want to get all your pieces in the game, and that's the one advantage I have. Now I'm down 2 pawns, but if you look at this, all of my pieces are ready to jump into the game, and my king is over here relatively safe. But he has 2 pawns, and I don't have enough compensation. So knight d4 right away forks the queen and the bishop, and there's just no way to stop him from grabbing the bishop or exchanging off more pieces. And the more pieces he can exchange off, the better he is. So at this point, black has a really strong advantage, a winning advantage. But not with the move queen takes a3. It looks like bishop to b6 or bishop to d7. Something to sort out his development right away is more important in this point than grabbing another pawn. And the other problem with queen takes a3 is that it opened up this diagonal to his king. His queen was sitting on this diagonal, and it left that diagonal to grab a pawn. And now I can immediately cause trouble by queen b5 check. So let's... I thought of this idea, actually. I saw this, and I said, well, he can just stop the queen with this move, bishop to d7, which is true. That's the best move there. But I can take another pawn. So I'm only 2 pawns down now, and I'm attacking his rook to d8. And that's interesting, f5. So it looks like the engine thinks white is better, even though white is 2 pawns down. And it just has to do with the activity of the pieces. I certainly would not find a move like f5. It looks like you're throwing away another piece to... but, you know, it does maybe cause some trouble with his development here. Oh, maybe the idea is to open up this diagonal for the bishop to prevent black from ever sorting out his development problems. So anyway, I didn't see that that deeply. I saw queen b5 check, bishop d7. I thought, well, it's not that great. Maybe rook c7 first. Still, black is better here, and he should just castle, and that would solve a lot of his problems. After b6, I think he had this idea, and he maybe played this move too quickly. He's actually completely lost. So isn't this funny? If you look at this, just one move, he's castles, or queen b3, getting onto a light square and stopping me from getting to this b5 check, stopping me from getting on this diagonal. Queen b2, queen b3, queen a4. Yeah, all those queen moves guard the square b5 or castling, getting away from the check the simplest way. And black is doing just fine. His extra material is going to win the game for him, basically. He's 3 pawns up at this point, and the evaluation is only 1 pawn, so it still says he's going to have to give something away, give some material back, but he should be better. But after this move, suddenly I'm winning. And it starts with queen b5 check. And this has got to be bad because, there's just all these open lines, not that one, open lines onto the king. And he just has limited number of moves, but it's hard sometimes to find the precise best continuation. So his only move here is king d8, basically, and he played it. And then my only move to keep that winning edge is rook f to c1. And I thought about that move. It's a very natural move here. And I wasn't sure there was a great continuation after that. I was thinking, well, why don't I grab this pawn over here so when rook f to c1 comes, it comes with a threat to double on the 7th rank. But rook f to c1 comes with a threat already. I just didn't see this. So what is the threat of rook f to c1? So first of all, black is, if you follow the computer line, it recommends black giving up the queen for the rook. So that's obviously losing. So the question you have to ask is, what is, if black does a nothing move, what is white's big threat here? And there's a mate in 6 here, starting with the move queen c6. So that's the big threat. The big threat is just tripling on this file. Now, for one thing, this bishop is undefended, insufficiently defended. So if black does another nothing move, say moves a rook, then you can just take here, and that's checkmate. King to e7 first, and then the rook comes down, and that's checkmate. So that's clearly losing. So you don't want to give up the bishop. But what else could you do here? The queen to c6, in addition to this threat on the bishop and checkmate threat, is also attacking the rook in the corner. So, yeah, once again, if you move this rook, it's the same as what I showed before. This is just leading to a mate in 3, starting with rook takes c8. If you bring the queen back to defend the bishop and stop all of that, then queen d6 check. Another mating idea. Queen d6 check. Bishop d7 leads to mate, and king here leads to mate. Wow. So there's problems all over after queen c6. Yeah, just an unstoppable mate. 6 moves at most. So that's the big threat, the move queen c6. So rook f to c1 was what I should have played here, and then and then black's best move is sacking the queen to try and stave off the mate. So instead, I take here, and now the game has once again swung in black's favor. It just shows how double-edged this position is, how precise you have to be when attacking too. So, but the big thing I overlooked and missed was this queen c5 check. Forces an exchange of queens and takes a lot of the power out of my attack. And you would think black is only 2 pawns up now. I managed to snag 1 pawn, but he's 2 pawns up, and we're in an endgame position, and you would normally think this would just be overwhelming for black. But it's not so easy. His advantage is only 6/10 of a pawn. So, I was at first thinking of just resigning at this point, honestly. And then I started noticing a few things. For one thing, his king is still wide open. So I play this move, bishop a5 check. King runs to e8. And the rook is controlling where his king can go to. I thought, well, maybe there's something here. So rook c7, attacking a loose pawn, just gaining a tempo. And my rook was under attack, so it had to be moved. Okay, so c4. Now the pawn is protected. And then bringing the other rook into the game. Oh, no, bishop to b4. I thought this might be a better position for the bishop. And threatening rook to rook e7 check. I don't know if that's a big threat. The king could run away back to d8, I guess. Anyway, my opponent played bishop to d7 here, just trying to get his pieces out. I'll cancel that. He played bishop to d7. Yeah, that's a recommended move, so that's a good move. And now I went bishop to d6 here, holding on to my rook and then making way for the other rook to come in. So he starts pushing his pawns. That's his advantage and a logical way to play. I bring my other rook into the game. And he plays rook to g8. Because I am threatening just to double rooks and win his bishop. So rook to g8 allows him, when I double rooks, to bring his rook up to defend. So it's interesting. Black is still 2 pawns up, but the evaluation is only slightly in favor of black. Well, you know, half a point is still probably a winning edge. Black ought to win this game, but it's difficult to play, and his pieces are awkwardly placed. So it's interesting that the advantage is no more than half a pawn, even though he has 2 pawns. Okay, so I play the move rook a7, figuring, well, at least maybe I'll get one of the pawns back, and maybe I can get into a drawish endgame with opposite-colored bishops. I didn't really think I had much hope of winning at this point. But it's interesting how it goes. In just a couple of moves, he plays a4 to move the... that was it. Yeah, and this move here. So this pawn is under attack, and if he moves the king, I'll just grab the pawn. King d8 is the recommended move, though. And if I grab the pawn here, yeah, he's now 1 pawn up, and maybe should go on to win at that point. So losing the pawn is the best thing he could do here. So after king d8, my best move is not to take the pawn, but to play bishop c7 check. To take this way, bishop c7 check, king c8, and bishop here, grabbing the pawn this way. And just a slight edge for white. Yeah, this for black. Slight edge for black. So this bishop is in position to stop this pawn from advancing. But the other pawn, the other pawn can come through. This would be hard to play, but maybe it's drawable. Okay, that would be black's best play. When he advances a4, suddenly he's losing. And I didn't. This is part of what I missed during the game. But after rook to a8 check, there's only 2 moves here for the king. Well, only 1 move for the king, and what I missed was that this leads to checkmate. Very nice checkmate here. The rook is guarding these squares, the bishop is guarding these squares, and his own pieces are blocking the escape squares. So he's just trapped by his own pieces that never got developed. So what he tried was the only other move to avoid mate, but this involves drastic loss of material wherever he goes. King f7, rook f8 mate again, so king d7, and a rook here, check, and he resigned because he's losing the rook over here. So if we back up to that last critical moment here, yeah, the move a4 just loses the game here. He had to start worrying about all these mating threats. So, with the move like king d8, black still keeps the advantage and can play for the win. It just shows how dangerous it is, though, when your opponent has piece activity and how careful you have to be. So anyway, pretty interesting game, I thought. It's interesting that I missed that mate in 1 idea. I kept wondering during the game why he played bishop to... okay, a4. Yeah, I wondered why he played bishop to c8 here. But it's because the other move led to checkmate. So he was already losing after the move a4. So that was an interesting point in the game, I thought. Okay, if you have any comments, leave them in the section below. And I will see you again soon. Bye.